Meta stock deserves its own video here today. We are talking about one stock and one stock only in this one, Meta stock. This stock is absolutely on fire. We're up another $18,000 on the stock here today. Another massive move up, $296. It's getting very close to $300 now at this point. In the public count, we're now up $315,000 on Meta stock. So there's a lot going on beneath the surface with Meta that I want to talk about in this video. There's a lot of things going on above the surface in regards to Meta stock here today. We've got to speak about the valuation, where the stock is ultimately heading by the end of this year, and many other various topics. So it's a Meta dedicated video. I thought it absolutely deserved it. The stock's been just one of the best stocks in the market this year, obviously, and it deserves to just get its own video here today, and that's exactly what we're doing. So appreciate everybody joining me as always. Thanks so much, folks. Thank you everybody that's subscribed to the channel. I hope you guys get a lot of value out of this video here today. Let me know in the comments section if you do, and I appreciate you all joining me as always. Okay, and also if you see this video in the first few hours, it is out. We're still going to have the $10 Patreon tier open. It closes at 8 p.m. tonight. Okay, 8 p.m. tonight, it's closed, and then it's probably going to be closed all the way until I might open it for Black Friday at the end of November. We'll see, but it's going to be closed for a long, long time. So if you're looking to get access to the moves I'm making in the market, be able to track that Fidelity account I have in the Patreon portfolio, all the stocks I'm buying and selling, things like that, make sure you get in like literally within the first few hours of me producing this video and making it, because it will be closed for a long time. That closes at 8 p.m. So that will be pinned comment down there. So first thing, just to start out, we'll hear a little fun, okay? Meta and Tesla have been battling out who's the first back to $300, and it looks like Meta's going to get it, okay? You never know. Musk could pull a rabbit out of the hat here, and maybe we go, 300 plus on Tesla first. But being the two main positions in the public count, these stocks are obviously doing tremendous for us, and it looks like Meta's going to get it. 400, we'll see what happens with that, but it looks like Meta's going to get it to 300, okay? Now, in relation to this, in relation to the whole Zuckerberg-Musk situation, okay, something very important is about to happen here. Meta's Twitter killer app, Threads, is on its way, and you get a cheat code to download it. Their new app here is coming out literally tomorrow, okay, the day after I'm releasing this video. So if you see this tomorrow or anytime past that, the app will already be out, okay? Now, first thing that's very, very important about this, okay, this is, to call it a Twitter killer is, in my opinion, ridiculous, okay? Twitter's always going to have a dedicated user base. I do not think this is going to be a Twitter killer. I think this is going to be way bigger than Twitter. That does not mean Twitter has to die or anything like that. But Twitter has been a stagnant platform for a long, long time now at this point in time. Twitter's been around for almost 20 years. And to be honest, like when it comes to Twitter, we're talking about a platform that has, 300 something million users on it. 300 million, okay? That's small potatoes from this type of stuff Meta does. They're at whole different levels when it comes to everything Meta does, okay? When it comes to Meta, we're talking about billions of people, not hundreds of millions of people. That's child's play, okay? That's Twitter, Snapchat, those platforms, little guys, okay? Facebook has 3 billion monthly active users on it when it comes to Facebook, okay? These are the sorts of numbers we're talking about when it comes to Meta. WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta. WhatsApp has over 2.4 billion users on WhatsApp. When it comes to Instagram, Instagram has 2.3 billion users on it roughly, and growing. That number is still growing, and it's growing substantially, okay? If we look at something like Instagram's revenue over time, right? Instagram's revenue went from basically nothing in 2015 to likely within the next couple of years here, we should cross $100 billion plus a year in annual revenue for Instagram. When we talk about Facebook Messenger now has around 1 billion active users on it, okay? So the thing that's important to understand is Twitter's going to continue to be around. This, for Threads to be a huge success, Twitter does not have to die, and we need to make that very clear. And to be honest, Meta's on such a different level when it comes to them building social products that if all they became was Twitter, it would be a disappointment for the company. Let's just call it what it is, okay? This company is on a whole different epic level than something like a Twitter, okay? Now, Zuckerberg says, thank you, Mr. Musk, okay? Because Elon Musk bought Twitter, and what he has shown is basically you can turn that business around and make it a success. And I think because of what Elon Musk has done with Twitter, I think Meta and Zuckerberg has looked at that and said, okay, we can actually make this a viable, successful platform and product now that Musk has kind of shown the way. And if you know something about Zuckerberg over time, and you know what he's built. This man, he's going to copy you, and he's going to do it better than you do it, and he's going to get way more users, and he's going to make way more money off it than you make off it, okay? And so will Meta's product be a lot more successful than Twitter? Probably. That's just the honest truth. No different than they take whatever everybody else is doing, they adapt to their own, and then they end up, over a few years, next thing you know, they got the way bigger thing than you had, and it's like, what the heck, man, that was our idea. It was our idea, right? You know, that's the way it had. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be, as long as Zuckerberg's leading this company. And so, I think, in my opinion, Zuckerberg should give a big thank you to Elon Musk for basically turning around Twitter. And of course, some people look at Elon Musk and they say this man has caused the demise of Twitter. And it really depends. People are very passionate about this. I've read through ridiculous amounts of comments and threads on Twitter and whatnot, and just people just dogging Elon Musk. He's ruined the platform, this and that. Okay. And I've read other people saying he's done a great job. I was never really a Twitter user, so I don't want to say Elon Musk has made it the greatest thing ever or he's ruined it. But the bottom line is, at least as far as the business fundamentals, he's clearly turned that around. Whether you liked the way Twitter used to be a year ago or you like it better now, the bottom line is, when it comes to the business perspective, Elon Musk has done a better job with Twitter. He's leaned out the organization in a massive way, and he's shown that it can be a business that can hopefully be profitable and successful over time, okay? Now, next up here, this is very important, okay? Apple and Meta are at war right now, and this war is heating up in a major way, okay? Now, basically, Meta stole a lot of employees. We could call it stealing. We could call it just, offering a lot more money to basically Apple employees, Microsoft employees, but specifically Apple, okay? Now, Meta attracted a lot of those folks because Meta's getting into the hardware business in a huge way, okay? And gosh, if I was going to steal employees away because I was building a massive electronics hardware business, where would I want to steal those employees from? Oh, probably Apple, because they're like the best in the world at this game, okay? They're the most profitable. They do this game at a high level. And so in 2021 specifically, and at the beginning of 2022, Meta stole away a lot, and I mean a lot, of high-level Apple employees, okay? Some of those employees have been fired in 2023. Now you say, that's ruthless business, man. They stole those people away, then they fired them a few years later. Believe me, man, these aren't the type of workers that make like $40,000, $50,000 a year. The type of employees that Meta stole away from Apple are the type that make hundreds of thousands of dollars of compensation a year, even millions of dollars of compensation a year. They're the type of employees that were probably making $700,000 a year at Apple and said, you know what? Meta's offering $950,000, and although Apple's been loyal to me, I want $950,000 a year because I'm so valuable. Those are the type of people that ended up likely getting fired. But Meta got all the information and knowledge you could ever want in how to scale a business that is also a physical hardware business as well. And so Meta's got all the secrets now at this point in time, and they got it, man. They basically bought the secrets. That's all I can say. And that's perfectly legal business. We know these companies have been at war for a while, right? Apple's hurt Meta a couple years ago in a significant way with all the data stuff they did, all the data changes. That hurt Meta in a massive way in terms of their business model. And Apple made Meta look like the bad guys, and they made themselves look like the good guys. Really, it was just, Apple understanding we could take tens of billions of dollars of revenue away from Meta if we make a few slight tweaks here. We're going to cause a massive headache from them, which is going to cause them to hire less of our employees away, which is going to be able to allow us to pay our employees less because they don't have somebody competing out there who's going to beat us out, okay? And so that's the situation that's been going on, right? And now Apple's Vision Pro has been announced. Now, this is another thing that I think Zuckerberg should thank Apple for basically getting a lot of buzz around this. We know if Apple's going to do a hardware product. We do know it's going to get massive amount of buzz because it's Apple. It's Apple. Like anytime Apple launches a hardware product, it's going to get a massive amount of buzz because of the history of Apple. We do know that, okay? But the interesting thing is, in regards to this, right, is here we are, we're going to have Quest 3 shown off in a much deeper way here in about 2 months. And this is a product that should be able to scale in a massive, massive way, right? And this is a product that's going to be priced around $500 or so versus obviously Meta Quest after tax, you're looking at nearly $4,000, right? So they're clearly going after different markets. Now, let me show you the internal message that was given by Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg, to the Meta team here, okay? Because he actually responded, it was a day after or 2 days after, to Apple Vision Pro getting announced, okay? And this is what Zuckerberg said in regards to this, okay? He said, Apple finally announced their headset, so I want to talk to you about that for a second. This was him talking to Meta team, okay? He says, I was really curious to see what they were going to ship. And by the way, Apple's not shipping anything anytime soon, okay? That'll be more 2024, 2025 thing. And obviously, I haven't seen it yet, so I'll learn more as we get to play with it and see what happens and how people use it. From what I've seen internally, I'd say the good news is there's no kind of magical solution that they have on any of the constraints on laws of physics that our teams have already explored and thought of. They went with a higher resolution display, and between that and all the technology they put in there to power it, it costs 7 times more and now requires so much energy that you now need a battery and a wire attached to use it. They made the design trade-off, and it might make sense for cases that they're going for. But look, I think their announcement really showcases the differences in values in the vision that our companies bring in this in a way that I think is really important. We innovate to make sure that our products are accessible and affordable to everyone possible. And that is a core part of what we do. And we have sold tens of millions of Quests. More importantly, our vision for Metaverse and presence is fundamentally social. It's about people interacting in new ways and feeling closer in new ways. Our device is about being active and doing things. By contrast, every demo that they showed was a person sitting on the couch by themselves. I mean, that could be a vision of the future of computing, but that's not the one I want. There's a real philosophical difference. Philosophical, I can never pronounce that word. Philosophical. You do it for me, okay? Sound it out for me in the comment section. Difference in terms of how we're approaching this. In seeing what they have put out there, they're going to compete just made me even more excited in a lot of ways and optimistic on what we're doing matters and we're going to succeed. But it's going to be a fun journey, he says, right? And so clearly these companies are going to battle it out. Zuckerberg doesn't look at it as a real challenge. I look at it as a little bit similar to Android versus iOS, which is, two very different views of how mobile platforms should be done. There's going to be some overlap there, but they've clearly competed differently over time and they've gotten different results. And Android's ultimately got the massive market share, but I think Apple's won ultimately. Why did Apple win? Well, because if Google would have focused, in my opinion, on their own hardware and come up with hardware that was sufficient up to kind of Apple standards, I think they could have really competed. But in those days, Google was really, I mean, we have to go back to 2006, 2007, 2008. Okay, Google was so focused on YouTube at that time and Google search and the growth that they had there that they didn't really take hardware that serious. And I think if they took hardware serious, Google would have built a company that's maybe a $4 or $5 trillion company here today. But instead, Google didn't really take hardware serious until it was way too late. Like by the time Google started to take hardware serious, the game had already been won. Apple already won the hardware game at that point in time. So Android decided to kind of go the route of, and Google decided to go the route of just letting everybody use it. But ultimately, they could have gone that route, and they could have also taken their hardware very serious, but they didn't, okay? And so that ultimately, in my opinion, held Google back in a massive way. And so today, Apple's a much larger company, because at the end of the day, Apple makes way more money than, obviously, Google McDougal, right? The interesting thing, and I think this matters in a significant way in regards to Quest and their product, right, is Quest 3, I think, is going to sell somewhere between 50 million and 100 million units. That's my personal opinion on what I think demand's going to be there. I think with the buzz that's in the space now, specifically because Apple got in and they create so much buzz whenever they launch a hardware product, and a lot of people realizing, I can't afford that crap, like it's $4,000, but I can't afford $500 and it looks awesome, right? And so if you look at Quest 2 sold around 20 million units roughly. And so in my opinion, Quest 3 is going to do between 50 million and 100 million units. And the beautiful thing for Meta is they're going to reach mass scale way before Apple can ever dream of reaching mass scale. Like, when does Apple reach mass scale in VR? I mean, if they do, there's a question, if they do ever reach mass scale, and mass scale means selling 50 million, 100 million plus units a year, or in total, right? I think that could be 2025, 2026, maybe 2027 for Apple. So we're talking about years from now in terms of reaching any sort of big scale in terms of the Vision Pro product, and if they create any products that are going to be cheaper price points or anything like that. So which means Meta is going to ultimately capture a massive amount of developers that are going to take building VR very, very serious, which is going to be a change because Apple's kind of always been the innovator and kind of stealing everybody to be developers on their stuff more than anybody else. But I think ultimately Meta's going to beat them. Their strategy makes a lot more sense. And, obviously, Apple used to really understand this back in the day, right? And when they launched iPhone, when they launched iPad, it was extremely popular with the youth, like specifically people under the age of 30. A lot of the older folks, people in their 40s, 50s, business professionals, things like that, they didn't take iPads serious. They didn't take the iPhone serious. They thought those were just fun devices for the kids, okay? It was over time, as the years ticked on, that more and more of, let's call it older folks, took the iPhone more serious as like, this is going to replace my BlackBerry, and took the iPad more serious as this is going to, replace a lot of use of my laptop or my traditional computer and things like that. But they really captured the youth, and Apple's gone with a different approach to Vision Pro. They're trying to attract, well, who's going to afford a $4,000 device? I mean, that's only going to be super older people. So they're trying to attract people in their 40s and 50s and 60s to use that VR device, which is, going to be, I think, a much tougher proposition because the youth just can't afford it. And their parents can't afford it either, just to be quite frank, at that sort of price point, right? And, the two big guys that obviously ran Apple and, came up with the things like the iPhone and the iPad and the MacBook and all these devices that are super popular today, these are the two men that used to run Apple, right? It was a Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive show. These were the two men in charge, and they understood the youth. They understood coming out with products that were at price points that the youth could, and their parents could afford, right? The high school kids that were excited about it, the middle school kids, the college kids, the people in their 20s that just graduated college and are entering the workforce and things like that. They understood about, look at what they did with the iMac line after Steve Jobs came back and what Johnny Ive and Steve Jobs did there. Look what they did with the iPod line, right? Capturing the youth there. Look what they did with the iPhone. Look what they did with the iPad. All the devices, right? And so those two men led that company at that point in time, but who's the number one and number two that Apple lists on their website nowadays, right? It used to be these two guys were the ones running the show. It's this man right here, Tim Cook, he's the number one, and the number two they list on their website is Catherine Adams. In all due respect, do you think these two understand anything about capturing the youth, building out massive new epic products? I mean, just all due respect, I don't think they do, okay? And that's the bottom line with that. I don't want to say anything more disrespectful, but they just don't, okay? That's the bottom line with that. And so if Zuckerberg had to compete with these two guys on hardware, I say, good luck, Zuck. Good luck, okay? But with these two being the ones running the show at Apple, I like his chances. I'll put it that way. Against these two, good luck, Zuckerberg. Against these two, I like your chances a bit, okay? And so this is going to be an intriguing thing to see who actually wins this war, because it actually might be the first hardware battle that Apple has lost. And they've never lost a hardware battle before, from what, or at least, as long as I can see. I mean, at the end of the day, they won them all, right? But if we look at Apple's business model, let's not fool ourselves. This is all Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive. The whole thing, okay? iPhone, thank you, Steve Jobs, thank you, Johnny Ive. All Apple's done over time is just make the device a little better, a little faster, a little better cameras, all those sorts of things, and keep up with the tech, right? Which much of that tech, by the way, is not even built by Apple. It's built by other semiconductor companies and other companies in general, and Apple just plugs it into their devices, okay? The Mac business, thank you, Steve Jobs, thank you, Johnny Ive. The iPad business, thank you, Steve Jobs, thank you, Johnny Ive. The wearables business, that's all Johnny Ive, okay? AirPods, Apple Watch, all Johnny Ive. In the services business, thank you, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was the one that thought of, making basically software integrate into the device as well as anybody. And, obviously that's built in their second biggest business now at this point in time. So their whole business is Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive, and now they're trying to go into this new, obviously, direction with Vision Pro and VR and everything that's going to happen there. But the problem is the company doesn't have Steve Jobs and Johnny Ive there. This is not this new device and what they're doing there. This has nothing to do with Steve Jobs. This has nothing to do with Johnny Ive. Versus everything they've ever had in their history has been Johnny Ive and Steve Jobs. So it should be really intriguing to see if they could actually create something that's massive and huge, massive, epic success without those two gentlemen, because they haven't proven up to this point. They haven't proven they could do that yet, right? And so I like Meta's chances here. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Now, the other part of Meta and why the stock's likely running a whole lot more ahead is the valuation's far too low. Here's the deal. It's two parts, okay? One is analysts are too low on their EPS estimates, okay? With the cuts Meta have done and the revenue growth this company has that's going to come in from Instagram Reels, from the checkmark service, from the ad market getting in a much better place than it was 6 or 12 months ago. On top of that, WhatsApp monetization is about to go to the moon, okay? You remember earlier I showed what happened with Instagram monetization over the years? That's about to happen with WhatsApp, essentially, over this next few years. So, and it's already going to start playing out this year, okay? So EPS estimates far too low, in my opinion. I think the high guy on the street is closer to reality than kind of what analysts have here. I think $12, something's in the bag for 2023. I think the big question is, are they going to do $13 or $14? I think, like I said, $12, slam dunk. Is it going to be 13 or 14? So this number is likely going to be wrong, which means analysts are going to have to bring up their numbers for next quarter and the next quarter and for the overall year. Even if these analysts were right about their numbers, which in my opinion are too low, you're trading at less than a 25 forward P for Meta for a company that has this sort of growth ahead in terms of their revenues and their earnings per share for as far out as I can see. It's way too low of a number, okay? 2024, they had the same issue again, okay? I mean, if you were paying a 24P for 2024 numbers, that's a steal deal. You're stealing money from Meta still at this point in time. But analysts only had them doing $14, a little over $14. I think by this time next year, analysts will be expecting $16, maybe $17 for the company next year. Because remember, all these employee cuts that they have going through this year, that's all going to be obviously done here. And so next year, they're going to be running a lean organization all 4 quarters, okay? And they're going to be showing much better revenue growth, likely on a year-over-year basis than this past year. So what we're looking at here is whatever they're going to have coming in for revenue over the next several quarters and over next year is going to be, let's just put it this way, the dollars that reach that top line, a whole lot more of that dollar is going to be reaching the bottom line in terms of net income. And so we have an interesting situation with Meta, in my opinion, where even if these numbers were correct, the stock's a steal deal. But the problem is the numbers aren't right, in my opinion, and they're far too low, which means analysts are going to have to bring up their estimates and what they're expecting and all those sorts of things. It's going to be a fun time for the stock. Now, the next component of this is to piggyback off that, right, which is obviously matters in the stock in terms of stock price in a significant way, is analysts are going to have to jump over themselves to raise price targets on the stock, to bring up projections on the stock. So this is one component that analysts are going to have to jump over each other for, is to start raising EPS estimates, in my opinion, especially starting next quarter when they see the numbers come in and they're like, oh. And then they hear some guidance type numbers and they're going to realize, crap, man, our numbers are too low. We need to bring up and up and up, okay? But then on top of that, they're going to have to chase over each other for likely raising the price target, because these guys and gals are way too far behind, because Meta's gone up so much so fast that none of these analysts were really expecting these sorts of moves. I mean, you still had people with $100 price targets on the stock. Are you kidding me? Like, you're going to be flipping my flapjacks. So these analysts are going to have to run over each other to bring up their numbers and to bring up price targets. And that's going to be something that plays out in the back half of this year. And then you have a lot of Wall Streeters, right? A lot of these fund managers that are way underinvested in the market that will likely have to chase returns in Q4, right? And they're going to look out there and say, where do I want to chase returns at? At Apple that has, negative earnings right now and has negative revenue? Do I want to chase there at a 30-something PE? Or do I rather chase Meta that's likely going to have mid to high double digits revenue growth with insane EPS growth over the coming quarters and is trading at a 20-ish forward P? Who would I rather buy? Of course, they're going to chase into Meta at the back half of this year. And so when I look at all this and I see all this kind of lining up, it looks to me like Meta's on its way to $400 plus, especially if those EPS numbers come in. If those EPS numbers come in that I think are coming in, the stock's going to run to 400 plus and break an all-time high this year, which is pretty shocking because, a lot of people obviously didn't expect that. But there was a reason I was buying the stock so heavily last year, right? I put $77,000 in the stock in a day. If somebody sold me these shares at, $88.94? Like it was laughable. There's a reason I bought this stock so heavily last year, because I recognize, if they just start cutting some employees, the company, I never doubted the revenue growth opportunity with Meta. Like that's solidified. So at the end of the day, all they had to do was do some major employee cuts because they are way overhired, and EPS is going to take off like a rocket ship for this company. That's exactly what we're about to see play out. And so it's going to be a very interesting time with Meta, but yeah, I would not be surprised at all if the stock doesn't run to 400 plus by the end of the year. Regardless, I'm happy, whether the stock's 296, 396, 350, it doesn't matter. It's all gravy in that, okay? Appreciate y'all joining me as always. Thanks so much for being subscribed, folks, for this Meta dedicated video. Once again, Patreon tier closes at 8 p.m. tonight. For the $10 tier, you get to see all the moves I'm making in the Patreon portfolio through to Fidelity Investments. So yeah, that will be pinned comment down there to get access to that. Much love and have a great day.